Welcome all as we congregate to the greatest toy line in community, ever growing, ever changing. As we collect and adapt these figures to our own imaginations and embrace the fun, there's much to learn, especially if you're new to Mythics. Welcome, friends, and welcome to another episode of New to Mythics, episode 38. I am welcomed here. I'm talking to Mr. Bradley Treadaway. How are you tonight, sir?
Doing very good. Thank you so much for having me on. Pleasure to be here for sure.
Thank you so much. And sorry about I had some more technical. Man, it's been a rough go lately, but I've had some technical issues, but I think I've finally figured it out. I went old school. I had to get like a hardwired Ethernet cable and just attach it, and a long 50-foot cable that goes up the stairs into the room, but it's crystal clear. So sometimes the old ways are the best ways. But how are you doing? You
Doing
feeling
good. Doing good. Yeah. I mean, nothing wrong with a 50-foot Ethernet cable. You get a
right?
little security and stability.
Right.
Nothing wrong with the old school there. And, certainly the technical troubleshooting, we are soldiers at arms together in that. That's a good part of my daily. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, you and we've been talking for a little bit. Well, since Legion's Con, we've been trying to schedule a time where we can talk, and my schedule is busy and you're busy, and then we had COVID together. So we've been we've been dodging and trying to connect, but I appreciate you finally being able to pick a time, and me being able to meet it too. So you're at the studio. I didn't realize. I saw some figures behind you, and I'm like, maybe he's got figures at his house or something. I didn't. It's none of my business. I didn't ask. But so people that don't know, Brad or Bradley works with the studio, Four Horsemen Studio. He's at the studio now. I do want to, of course, talk about the studio, but I would rather talk about you first, if that's
Sure.
okay. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do besides work for the studio? What do you do? I just found out this myself. I did not know. So can you tell me about yourself a little bit?
Sure. So, I'm Bradley Treadaway. I mean, I've joined the Four Horsemen in an official capacity over the summer, and now I'm a full-time staff member here. Super happy to be on board. Kind of reconnecting with I guess most people can recognize my last name is familiar in the Legion's community. I'm the younger brother of Eric Treadaway, and super cool to join forces with him in this kind of new adventure, of course, that he's been on for a long time. But before kind of stepping into this world, which I'm super happy about, I've been kind of navigating both the art and academic world for the last 20 years. I've been, operating as a filmmaker and as an artist and as a college professor since the early 2000s. And in fact, finished teaching a class on Tuesday at FIT. So I'm kind of clean and clear for the semester, and I think I'm going to even take another foot out of the academic world as I go into 2025, and dip that toe a bit further into the Four Horsemen and the world of mythos here, and super excited about it. And so I mean that's kind of a starting point. I mean I'm born and raised in the South, born in Alabama, grew up in Tennessee and Louisiana. I've lived in Brooklyn for the last 20 years, where I've done most of my profession, both as a teacher and as an artist. Traveled a lot. That's kind of helped formulate a lot of my background and stuff visually. And all of that has kind of led me sort of back to my own backyard, both in my art practice, but also just as far as, reconnecting with Eric and the Horsemen here. I mean, I've been popping my head in and out of this world since before the Four Horsemen were even a thing, even when those guys were at McFarlane way back in the day. I met Jim and Cornboy back then. So, and I've popped in time and again doing casting and cleanup and doing some painting, doing some photography. I did some of the Kickstarter videos back in the day. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah, I'm not unfamiliar to the Horseman's world, but it's only in the last 5 or 6 months or so that I have come off of the diving board and I'm fully in the deep end now.
Yeah. So I'm interested in your transition from maybe down south, or you said Tennessee. Um, if you don't mind me asking, what brought you to Brooklyn or to New York? Because I feel like there's like a big film industry in the East Coast of New York and in that area. Besides LA, of course, but I think New York is a big film city.
Well, I think as a little kid, I think I came into some consciousness that there were some limits to my experience, socially, culturally, politically, any way that you want to cut it. And I think just early on, I had this bug to travel and to kind of see outside of my surroundings and what I knew at the time. And so travel was something that was really essential to kind of the space like right after high school. Like I just got the bug. I mean, to date, I don't know, I've been in maybe 28 countries or something
Oh,
like that.
wow.
And the camera guided me to many of those places. Um, but like growing up in the South and kind of recognizing that I didn't get to see such a broad expanse of the world. Like I really wanted to get out and change that dynamic a little bit. And then also, in the art world and the teaching world, like I went to graduate school in Southern Louisiana, and there just was not a lot of opportunity there. So there was always kind of an allure of New York to, working in the art world and stuff like that. Maybe I had some rose-colored glasses on at
Of
times.
course, yeah.
But, I wanted to get into a place where I could walk around and where I could be around tons of different people and glean new experiences and opportunities. And no doubt much of what I've done in these past 20 years being based in New York, it just wouldn't have happened if I was living in a place like New Orleans or
Right,
Baton Rouge or something like that. So it's
right.
been time well spent for sure.
So after graduate school, is that when you went abroad and started to travel?
After high school, I saved my money for like half of my junior and senior year of high school. And I did that kind of, backpacking in Europe thing.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
I did that right after high school. In college, I did a study abroad called Semester at Sea. I actually lived on a
Yeah.
steamship and sailed around the world, which
Wow.
it's kind of weird to reflect on, but yeah, I lived on a ship and sailed around the world. We had like a functioning but small university on the ship, and I went to Cuba, Brazil, South Africa, Kenya, India, Malaysia, Vietnam, China, and Japan, and
Wow.
those were really formative and eye-opening experiences to, I mean, every part of my person and life. Um, yeah, no doubt. I mean, even though those experiences are a bit more distant now, they certainly are. They're present with me in everything that I do and how I
Right.
behave and how I work and all that. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think it benefits people to see other cultures and how other people live and their different environments and all that. I think it seasons you as a person. You see different, what is important to us may not be important to other people, and you kind of get maybe a more worldly perspective
Mm-hmm.
by seeing way outside of your comfort zone and doorway.
No doubt. I mean, I think being behind a camera, you have to have you have to develop a way to be empathetic to the people who are on
Mhm.
the other side of your camera. And if you don't have that at your base, you're really in trouble as far as navigating the relationship between image maker and whoever is on the other side of that. And so, no doubt, I think like a sense of empathy came from that. I
Mhm.
mean, I saw kind of the greatest expanses of riches and the most difficult outcomes of
Right.
poverty, all kinds of just wildly different ways of being in terms of just how you go about your day or your
Mhm.
religion, class, and all that. And so those things, um, yeah, they transformed who I was, and no doubt, I think, yeah, they kind of guide what I do behind the camera, kind of
Right.
guide how I like have started to navigate the community here in Mythos. You know,
Mhm.
like you have to have kind of an understanding and a way of kind of connecting with people that isn't always accessible. And you know, traveling certainly opened up some of those doors for me as a youngster.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Wow. I can't imagine that was always a dream, was to be able to just explore the world. Um, but I never really thought about, I think I wanted to see, but I didn't think about filming, like that didn't occur to me to bring a camera. Like I was just like, I just want to experience everything. But so bringing the camera and filming stuff, did that like help you kind of find your vision when it comes to like filming, or like, like your identity, or like, what am I trying to say? Kind of like how writers discover their voice, or their style.
Mhm.
Like, did you learn like your technique, or your type of, like your filming identity?
I mean, yeah, sure. I think you have to just uh, experience some of the discomfort and the lack of familiarity as you're figuring out how to stand behind a camera and ask people to collaborate with you, right? Because I don't use the word like taking pictures. I use the word like making photographs or
Mhm.
making film, because it's not something that you take from someone. It's something that you engage in a process of
Right.
exchange with, right? And you've got to be on equal footing, or otherwise the balance is off, and the result comes from that. And I think learning how to position yourself like respectfully and quietly is something that you can't expedite. You may be more inclined to do that
Mhm.
than others, but it's something that you have to kind of be in the trenches of that, and suffer through some of the discomfort of it, both for yourself and also kind of understanding
Mhm.
that people on the other side of the camera might as well be a little uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
But the camera also, it gives me kind of an excuse and sometimes permission to be places, like, because I'm pretty comfortable communicating one on one and in small groups, but once the group becomes larger, I tend to shrink into the corner,
Mhm.
and I don't really like to navigate and certainly to present in large crowds. And the camera kind of allows me to. It's like a barrier almost that I can
Right.
hide behind.
Yeah.
And especially like a moment like Legion's Con, I would be socially pretty. It'd be a challenging place for me. Um, but having the camera there lets me be present, and
Right.
also kind of behave and have a comfort level that otherwise is not going to be
Well,
there for me.
I think that's how I first noticed you, because I'm trying to remember what event it was. It was some con that I was at, and I saw this guy like sliding through the room and going in front of people, or behind, or beside, and taking a picture, and then going over here. And I'm like, this guy is not a fan.
Hmm.
This guy is actually, has access. Like he's, next to the studio guys, or he's, in front of everyone taking. And I'm like, who is this guy? And it wasn't in a like, who the heck is this guy? It was like I noticed, like maybe other people didn't notice, but it was something that I picked up on. That
Maybe were
just
you? That was IshCon, maybe.
it was one of those cons, yeah, that I had noticed you. And I just, I mean, I don't know a lot about cameras and stuff like that, but I've always been interested in film, and just, watching you film, just it caught my attention, because I'm like, oh man, I wonder what is he filming and why is he filming it, and what's going on, and this is cool, and um, I don't know, it just caught my eye. So after your journey, after you went out and went out into the world, you came back. Was it to Louisiana, or
I
did
did,
you?
yeah. So, after college, I mean, I finished that study abroad, and I languished working in a coffee shop for about a year after I finished my undergraduate. I
Yeah.
was confused and just uncertain about what path my life was going to take. I really had this inclination to go back to India. Um, and after a year in the coffee shop thinking about it, I sold all my stuff. I bought a backpack, bought a camera, and a plane ticket, and I went to India for
Wow.
5 months and
Wow.
walked around and photographed. And that was my last big kind of far off international travel. I finished that, came back, and started graduate school in Louisiana, and worked on processing a lot of the things that I had shot there.
Mhm.
Um, and from that point, Louisiana, which is my ancestral home all the way back to like the 1780s or something like that. I mean, um, I kind of rediscovered some of my own genealogical and cultural roots, and really started to mine that, just for my own kind of knowledge, but also that really became center to what I have done as an artist for the last 20 years. Is my work is about family, it's about home, it's about memory, it's about like the cultural geography of New Orleans and the surroundings. It's
Mhm.
about intergenerational communication and what happens when with the kind of familial archives that we have as like photographs and films and letters
Right.
and personal effects. Like what happens in the passage of that from one generation to the next. And much of my artwork is kind of centered on those things. And it was interesting as I really started to get my feet into the studios here. One of my dear friends and somebody who's been close to my work for a long time said, "This is a really cool continuation of your work that's centered on family." And it hadn't connected to me that, yeah, in fact, like of course it looks different, but still my camera is pointed at something that is very close,
Right.
that I'm very connected to, and that's very near and dear to my heart, right? And so yeah, it looks different, but it's pretty awesome to be able
Right.
to work in this moment less with my ancestors who are now existing in, I don't know, spirit realms or however you care to define it. And now I'm like dealing with my family that's in the physical realm, who may
Right.
be 10 feet away from me or something.
Yeah, no, I love that. Sometimes a good friend can give you a new perspective on things where it's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. But like, I don't know Eric personally. I've met him, every con that I've been to, I've met him and spoke to him and all that. And from what I've seen of him and Cornboy, and Jim, I don't really know Jim very well either. Like I said, I've talked to him too a few times, but it seems like the way the studio is family. So in my mind, it, in my mind, it makes sense that that is attracting you also. Like, like if Eric presents this feeling of family, he's got his family at home, but like his people at work, he surrounds himself with people that are family to him. We can see that as fans, that
Hmm.
that you guys, I see the studio guys, they go out to dinner, they spend time together. Like Robert Cookie, he goes to Vern's house for Thanksgiving and holidays, and like I love that. If I was closer, I would invite Cookie over, to hang out with me too.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that, and it's so like endearing, but also attractive. Because like I'm nearly an orphan, not to talk about myself, but like when I see family,
Mm.
it draws me. And I think, when you get perspective, like being out in the world and like being so far from your family, you start to get like, you realize what's important. And
Absolutely.
it's like family, like that, like your roots, your heritage. Looking backwards, how strong, family is to keep going and to keep, the family alive. And then, looking to the future now, it's like you were looking behind and now you're looking like, oh, I've got family here right now,
Mm-hmm.
and that's become part of your life too. So I love that. And I don't know, I think that's a cool, that's a cool new facet and a new aspect of your life now, is that you're part of the studio, and now you get to show some behind the scenes stuff, like the documentary you did, which we'll talk about, Birth of the Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you're showing like behind the scenes, like it's not just pictures of the dragon, which is beautiful. The dragon's beautiful, but like it's the work, and it's like it's the family, like it's
Mm-hmm.
it's the people at the studio, like coming together. And I love that you showed that, everyone has a hand in this, in the effort.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you filmed it like perfectly.
Well, it's cool that you can pick up on like Vern and Cookie connecting and stuff like that, and that some of that camaraderie that is, I mean, it's as thick as thieves around here. I mean, it's a tight knit bunch, and it's real. Like it's real. The kind of bond that exists here. I mean, I've been working almost full time since I was 15 years old. I have never felt more like embraced and included and supported and welcome in such a meaningful way. And I mean, and I'll be clear, I have worked at places that really hang their hats on the notions of community and
Right.
togetherness. And a lot of that is empty air sometimes
Right.
underneath.
Yeah.
But the family here, with a family like this guy hanging out behind, I mean, it is as real as it can be. We got a gang hat on here. And I
Right.
mean, whether you're going to dinner, you're having lunch, or whether you're just lollygagging morning, noon, and night, we have a damn good time around here as we're
Yeah.
getting work done. And I mean this sincerely, and not because my paycheck comes from here. I have not worked in a place that has given me like more happiness and satisfaction to walk into the workplace than I have here. I mean, there really is a sense of family, and I mean, I think it. And for me, it's a unique position because, as I said, I've known Jim and Cornboy since before I could vote.
Yeah.
Before I was a legal adult. I mean, I've eaten Thanksgiving dinner at Cornboy's house more than this many times. Coming up, and so um, I think that puts me in a really unique position as a storyteller inside of the studios, because not only do I kind of bring everything that I've been developing in my craft over the last 20 years, like there's also a familiarity and an embeddedness that I don't think anybody else could really do
Mhm.
in
Right.
this world. And it's funny because the person who I feel most comfortable shoving the camera in their face is my brother. And I think most filmmakers, coming in from the outside, that might be who they would be inclined to be least comfortable kind of breaking that plane with. And of
Right.
course, I mean, I've known him since I was born. I don't have
Right.
any reservations to
Well,
to
I
stick
think
my
you
face.
you have a special like access, like you have like the ability to do that. You know, like when I was an intern, I was asking Eric questions while he was designing stuff for the designing part, and I was just like so interested in the creative part, psychologically, and just creating is so interesting to me, where it comes from, and so I just was asking him questions, and afterwards I'm like, Eric, I'm sorry if I hope I didn't seem like a heckler, because I was, he's like, no, he said, I would rather have you,
Yeah.
engage, and other than me droning about, what I do, I would rather have people be interested and ask questions, and it gets me thinking, and so I appreciated that aspect. But I think watching interviews, um, I feel like it's not the easiest thing for him to, like, he's a creator, he's
Hmm.
not a salesman, like, and I see that, but I appreciate that in him. Like, he's not out there, selling figures. If somebody comes up to him, then he'll say,
Right.
he'll answer questions and take a picture or sign whatever. But he's the creator, and like, I appreciate that. And I think it's cool that you can, focus on him, and he's, what is he gonna do, but
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, that's a fair and accurate read of Eric. I mean, he is not by his inclination a really like outward facing social person. I think it's fair to say he's not really comfortable being the center of attention.
mm,
Um, and frankly, as I've come to see him operate in these more public spaces, it's a character of his person that I have never really been privy to all of these years. And so it's kind of cool seeing him operate in that way, because he does kind of flip a switch and goes into that mode, which for me
right.
seems like pretty organic um, and yeah, just a lot easier than I would have anticipated before I ever saw him do that. But he's a calm, steady, and super humble person.
Yes.
Um, and like, yeah, and I know like one of his biggest challenges, like moving through the Legion's weekend, is like he wants to be generous with every person that comes face to face to him, but increasingly he may only be able to move 5 or 6 feet in front of him if
Right.
that goes unchecked, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think you did kind of tap into a couple of his personality traits that have been present since
Yeah.
childhood for sure. He'd
That's
he'd rather be behind the desk
There's
doing
nothing wrong with that. I mean, not
yeah.
everyone, and I tease people because, like, I know people that go to Legion's Con, and they kind of, they want it, but they also dread it because it's a huge social thing, and there's people like pressing, and there's so many people, and it could be a, an overload of just, everything happening. So I get that. And some of us, like me, it's like I'm like a fish going, from person to person,
Hmm.
and hugging, and giving, daps to everybody, and how you been, like, I live on that. But I get that it's not everyone's, and I totally understand that.
Hmm.
What I do want to ask you, because you have kind of a unique perspective that I don't really like get to ask people that aren't, I'm not going to say not in the community, because you are kind of quasi in the community,
Hmm.
but like, it's got to be surreal to like this is like a mini pocket universe. So like, I'm trying to ask a serious question, and we
I have no control over what happens behind me in these moments.
so
That
my
is a beautiful head, though, right?
that is a beautiful head.
And
That's a beautiful man and a beautiful head.
an improvement over the last head that was behind me here.
Yes.
Thanks, bro.
It's got it's got to be surreal though to see like your brother is famous, like Cornboy is famous in this pocket universe,
Mm-hmm.
this community, like, like I was at a convention, I think it was PowerCon 2 years ago, and and your brother was basically just standing near his figures, and there was a guy that was like, he had his son or something, and he asked Eric something, like, do they come in purple or something? I don't know. It was just like a random, but I'm thinking to myself, and I told Eric this afterwards, I go, that guy had no idea who you were. You know what I mean? Like, he did not know that you created this figure. He just thought you were just a guy that worked there.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of chuckled at that. But like, it's just so surreal how this community, like, it's unto itself, but like, it's got to be weird seeing, like, if Eric was pumping gas, no one would know that he's Eric Treadaway. Like, no one, he's just this guy pumping gas. But like, in
Mm-hmm.
our community, it's like the creator, or there's Corn Boy. You know what I mean? It's like people have this excitement, and like, they love these people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got to be strange from your perspective to see that.
It's strange, but also so like fulfillingly awesome in every way you could possibly cut it. I mean, of course, I've had a pretty direct awareness of how this thing has unfolded from the
Mm,
outset. And like I said, I mean, I've been in and out, and so it's not something entirely unfamiliar to me. But when I walked in, so we went to the Marriott maybe in September,
mhm.
and we went and walked around the rooms just to kind of get a sense of the spaces that we'd be operating in. And I wanted to do a lighting test and an exposure test. And we walked into the first two rooms where like the horseman shop was, and then where the armory was. Like, so
Mhm.
we walked into those rooms, and I said to myself, frankly, I was like, damn, Legion's Con is the real deal here. I was like, this is a pretty good little setup. And George was like, this is not Legion's Con. And so then we walked over into the main hallway, which they had
Just
two
huge.
thirds of it. Well, 2/3 of it was partitioned off. So we walked into 1/3 of it, and I was like, "Whoa, this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
awesome!"
You could put a
And
Millennium Falcon in there, like, no problem.
yeah, and then they said, "Well, this is only 1/3 of the main room," and
Mhm.
then we walked into the other 2/3, and I was flabbergasted. All that to say that, in spite of now having a lay of the physical land that Legion's Con would become, um, it was so just awesomely shocking to me how massive and how just inundated it was with people, and not just the people, but the energy of the people that was there. Like, just so much
Right.
support and positivity and inclusion. It just
Yes.
yeah, so it has been a really beautiful like period of discovery for me, and also to like really start to understand in a new and deeper way not just how cool the figures are, but more so like how meaningful the world that exists around these figures are.
Right.
Because right when you pull up that photograph of the dragon that Trevor made, it's clear like the four horsemen don't need me to illustrate the things they make. When you've got somebody like that who can make pictures like that,
Right.
that I certainly would never try, and certainly would never succeed in trying to step into a space like that. So for me, I have been like, it really was important to me to kind of carve out a unique space that allows that to shine in the way that it does, certainly. But I started to recognize how connected and how just fascinatingly unique the community around Mythos is. and
It's
and I said to
yeah.
myself, like, there are stories to be told here, and again, not about the toys, but about the community that makes the toys possible. And
Right.
that process is luckily has started and is unfolding and is going to continue to unfold.
Yeah, I think you kind of alluded to that, but I didn't want to bring it up unless you said anything. So, whenever or however in the future you do want to reveal any
Sure.
future things.
I mean, this is certainly no guarded secret. Birth of the Dragon was this kind of inward-facing thing, just because on a whim we said let's do it, and I started to get after it, and then I knew that with the 10-year anniversary, 25-year of the company coming up, that there were just really some seminal moments that could not be repeated and
Mhm.
that needed to be documented. And so, they gave me some license to kind of operate in those capacities. I'm sure you saw I brought one of my dear friends up to shoot with me, who also has to be distinguished because his name is Jeremy Grannon. So he's not only Jeremy, he's a JG. And so we had to figure out another way to refer to him
Right,
all weekend. So he now is effectively called. He's my personal Jeremy.
right.
um, uh, but I had that camera in my hand nonstop from Thursday to Sunday.
Mhm.
There is a mountain of awesome footage that I have
Can't
only
imagine.
begun to go through. And in fact, this weekend I can't count the hours I spent just going through the intern day footage, and it's kind of everything and more that I hoped it to be,
Mhm.
and I think that's sort of like next up on my plate, at least in like the documentary side, is
Right.
I'll cut together something that kind of summarizes and tells the story of intern day. So a lot of good footage under the belt there, and so
Right.
yeah, stories are going to continue to come out in that capacity. Something related to Legions Con will be a separate and standalone piece.
Mhm.
These are slow wheels that turn, but they're turning, and I'm kind of tasked with making stories out of these things to share back with all of you guys. And yeah, it's super exciting.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I'm excited with you. It's a very exciting time. And I'm left kind of wondering, so when you did join the studio, congrats on the email also, you know.
I have a
Scratch
source horseman
email.
email.
You let me know.
It's
Yeah.
official.
But was it like an organic thing? Was it like Eric was like, hey, I would like to, I'd like a filmographer of, everything that's going on. Like, when did it become like, okay, this is really happening? I know that you were always kind of around, but
Mhm.
when did it become like, you know, this is a real.
Well, in springtime, I started to come out, and the studio is about it takes about an hour and a half, a couple subways and a bus to get out here from my apartment in Brooklyn. I started to come out on a weekly basis for a couple of days a week, in between like my teaching and other work gigs and stuff like that. And honestly, I don't quite know how it happened. I was coming in for a few days a week. I was super happy and interested in being a more regular presence.
Mhm.
And I don't even know if Eric really knows how this happened. But one day Jim called me in and he's like, "Look, you do you want to do this full time?" And the answer was like, "Yes, I do." And that was kind of it. There wasn't a lot of formality to that process. I think that and really it was such a generous um, offer from Jim, and also, and again, I don't even know if Eric knew that was going to be on the day. I suspect, but
Right.
he tends not to be involved in those mechanics so much.
Right.
I certainly had no idea that this was an opportunity coming towards me. but I think I was eager and ready. I think also, look, it's as a child aspiring in creativity, it was not always easy to have an older brother named Eric. When I would go into art class, they'd be going down the roll and call out the name Treadaway and like be like, "Oh, it's a Treadaway. I remember one of you," and I'd have to be like, "No, let's
That was not.
let's temper expectations.
That
I
wasn't
don't
me.
have that Midas touch." And I mean, in truth, I do think that one of a real reason why I have the camera in my hand is because I did not possess the gifts with a pen or brush that my brother did,
Yeah.
and so and it was fine. It kind of allowed me to kind of to forge my own path. And I think as I got out of school and became a professional, like I needed to sort of sow my own oats and kind of lay
Yes.
down my own foundation. And I did have some apprehension, I think, throughout the years about hanging my hat too much on the Horseman Studios, just because of didn't want to be it to be a nepotistic thing or
Right. You want to make your own way and be
mhm.
an individual. I get that totally. I'm so interested in talent and like how does it manifest? Like, I think about and maybe I shouldn't think about like, movies or, you know, because I don't think it's real, but like I guess what I'm trying to say is like how does talent like is it random? Do you think that everyone is talented at something? Like are some people just star kissed? You know what I mean? Like how does that work? Like, you know, the person that could be, a guitar, god never was given a guitar and so that talent is just gone. You know what I mean? Like I'm just it's just so interesting. And I
Well,
don't even know if that's a question, but what is your thought on that? Like,
I mean, I think some people might be born with gifts or inclinations,
mhm,
um, but uh, you can't really become those things without putting in the labor to get there, right?
right.
And I think it's definitely fair to say that as a very young child, my parents identified that my brother had a gift. Like
Hmm.
it was clear very early on that he knew how to render things with his hand. But that gift was honed with countless hours and years of labor and effort and trial and error and failure that led to these kind of successes and clarity. So as talented as my brother is, it doesn't come without labor.
Hmm.
And I think for me, like the path to me kind of finding my skill set was probably less natural and less direct. It took a lot of labor to get there, and I think again, yeah, I think you may have some inclination or some penchant or some skill set like embedded in you, but if you don't put in the work, then you don't get to be like the creator of Mythic Legions,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah. I guess it has to be like the perfect kind of, you know, chemical cocktail of the person that works the hardest, that has the ambition and the drive, but also the talent, that to be able to, bring something to fruition.
Mhm.
Um, but
I
I
mean, there are few people who work harder and longer hours than Eric does, and I mean that's on top of being, an excellent and devoted husband and father, um, and community member. Oh, I see, we got a
yeah,
little photo bomber. Oh, what a
she's
cutie!
she's not Chris, but yeah, She's here for some attention.
That's a much nicer backdrop
Yeah.
than what I've added to the the image here. But yeah, I mean, it is the the countless all-nighters that I remember my brother doing, like through high school and college when he was still at home. I mean, it's it's not for lack of effort that he
Mhm.
finds himself in that place. And I know for me, like, going through, especially like in college, in my undergraduate and graduate studies, like I was never by any stretch the most talented person in my classes ever. Um, but I was more stubborn than most people. And, the work ethic, I think, that was passed on by my father and my mother, both. Um, those things, like, that's why I sit in the position I do now, is just because I'm more stubborn and just wouldn't give up or take no, and just
Mhm.
was willing to continue putting in the effort in the face of like hardship or rejection, or I don't know, however you want to, put an obstacle in front of you. Yeah, it's just about cutting labor. I think
Right.
sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. So back to the dragon for a minute. Was so you started to film, you said, was it around IshCon when you started, or like when did you like take on the role as maybe the videographer of the studio? Was it the dragon the first thing that you really started to focus on, or was it the community as well? Like, what was your focal point when you?
Um, I mean, I kind of came in uh, with a bunch of different hats. I mean, I was doing a little IT. I was doing some like file management. I mean, I have no trouble helping unload trucks or boxes off the truck or sweeping the floor. None
Yeah.
of that stuff is beyond what I'm willing to do in a day. I mean, there was definitely some key interest in me operating in a more documentary capacity. I do make some photographs around the studio when the press of time does not necessarily allow something to go out to Trevor. I might step in and do
Mm.
some quicker kind of need photography and stuff like that. But being behind the camera as a filmmaker was something that I think was identified early on. I mean, I very much hope to be telling community related stories around the world of mythos for years to come. There's a lot of really critical value, and I think not just for our audience and community, but I think like when we start talking about how meaningful this is beyond the realm of toys, like it's human interest stuff. Like it is just like you take the toys out of Legion's weekend, and what I observed there was one of the most like comprehensively awesome, inclusive, supportive, welcoming,
Yeah.
diverse communities that was so wholehearted and supportive. It touches me as much now to say, like, to recap those things as it did to witness and learn the fact that this exists, and that I was being, at least taking the first steps into like being welcomed into that community. I,
Yeah.
I, I don't say that yeah, there like that, there's no fluff in that statement. I mean, I work in social and community facing and documentary type of worlds, and people talk about inclusivity and in like all of the time, and are things that we should be talking about, but oftentimes I find that those terms are really easy to use and hard um, to really hold in meaningful
Yes. To
ways. and
live and
and,
yeah.
and what I saw at Legion's Con was like some of the most, yeah, just, I don't mean to be fluffy, but it was some of the most like heartwarming and like
No,
meaningful stuff I've,
absolutely.
I've
Like,
ever experienced in my life. Yeah, it's
yeah.
it's not a fluff to say that.
No, I mean the people that are fans know that, you know, that and that's, I think that that's just something that attracts us all together. You know, I was looking at my phone after the show, after Legion's Con, and I'm like, I've got to go to the internet to find pictures of these figures because, you know, I'm sorry, Eric, and these amazing things that he created, but I have hundreds of pictures of friends,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and good times that we had, and moments that I captured, and I forgot to take pictures of the figures, you know. And it's just, I told Cornboy, it's such an anomaly how positive and good natured and inclusive, like you say, is a great word, inclusive and welcoming this
Mm-hmm.
community is. Like, I've never seen or been part of anything like that before, and it's hard to describe to people or to, you know, share it if you're not in it, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
and there's no gatekeeping. It's like anyone is welcome.
Yes.
Like, you know,
Yes.
there's people I've seen in the community that will post something. I don't have a figure yet, but this community seems awesome. And people are like, yes, you're, you know, welcome. And, you know, what figure are you going to get? And I've seen people, and I've done it myself, where I'll send somebody a
Mm-hmm.
figure to, you know, here, check this out. Let me know what you think. And, you know, just that kind of just wholesome, good natured, welcoming. Like, I don't see that anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that you have picked up on it, and you see it, you know. And you're also, that was one of my questions, was, you know, how are you being welcomed? Like, have you been welcomed into this community?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not like you're not wearing a shirt that says, you know, Four Horsemen Studio, or I'm Eric's brother or something, you know what I mean? So, like, you know, as it goes along, people are, oh, okay, that's who he is. I didn't know. I just saw this
Mm-hmm.
guy, you know, this guy that was, you know, skirting around and taking pictures and stuff. So now I know who he is. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I was just interested in how you were received. And
Sure.
also, like, where do you think that this comes from? Like, Cornboy's theory is it comes from them, and it kind of radiates outward, which I buy into. But what is your thoughts? Like, how do you think this came about? Is it does it all go back to what you were saying when family? Like, do you think that that is how it is? Like, Eric and Jim and Cornboy created their own mini family at work, and it just kind of radiated outward?
I think it's not an understatement to say those things. I mean, you know, those guys have known each other well over 30 years. Um, you know, I think they experienced a parallel set of challenges in their work lives, and you know, found some harmony in terms of like what they wanted to do and what they kind of saw themselves having the potential to become. And you know, obviously took a huge risk, stepping out and creating their own company. And I mean, to their credit, as they did that, it was seems very clear that they wanted to create a company and a world around toys that they themselves would want to be a part of. You know, and I mean, CB kind of speaks to it in Birth of the Dragon. It's like, you know, that they're doing the things that they would want to do if they were not doing them.
Yes,
So,
I love that quote in that
uh,
film.
yeah, I'm not so graceful in recounting it now, but of course, CB like articulated it exquisitely. But yeah, I mean, I think there's that base, right, where I think they saw maybe a lack of some qualities out in the toy world that they felt that they could kind of fill the gap in, not just in terms of the um, like the quality and the detail and the nuance of the way they make the figures, but also being attentive and responsive to, in fact, very directly what people want. And I
Mhm.
think, you know, that started in the, well, I mean, it started before, but I mean, the Kickstarter was a really, the first Kickstarter in particular was a really great example of how the company would start to to exist and respond, because I mean, this certainly, I don't think it's such secret knowledge, but I mean, like that first Kickstarter, like it had a big bump, and then it kind of was languishing.
Mhm.
And then as it came to the end, and I think this is kind of how Kickstarters were working, but then at the end, like it took a massive bump, and then it kept bumping and bumping and bumping. And I think they were really racing behind the scenes to like to finish some new things for like add-on and stretch goals and stuff like that. And no doubt I think some of the decisions they were making were in direct response to what fans and what backers were saying, like what they saw as like another possibility, or they hoped they saw this. And
Mhm.
you know, the radar that is kind of circulating, seeking these signals from the community, like I think that radar is always on. And you know, you see it with some of
I
the
agree.
tributes and just some of the responsiveness to like the new types of characters, or you know, maybe the way a new hand works or something like that.
Right.
You know, they're listening for sure. And I think that's one of these huge starting points. But I think also, you know, and CB is maybe a little less in the forefront of kind of the social communication, but CB no doubt was one of the real foundations of being the voice between Four Horsemen and the community. And I think his generosity and just his like awesome kind of jovial, um, friendly warmth, like it just radiates and magnetizes.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that didn't really exist in the toy world, and that people had an appetite for. And when they saw that not only was it here in the Horseman's world, it was as genuine as you could possibly make it. Um, yeah, I think it creates a little bit of like it's like some loyalty
Mhm.
and yeah, like there's just a bond there that
Right.
is
Yeah.
not common
Yeah.
in a more transactional world, right?
Right. Yeah. I don't see that in other businesses or in other industries that, you know, that and I said it to Jim one time. I'm like, I appreciate you guys taking the time being here. I said, you know, would you, if you were given the chance, would you have your stuff at a Target? And he was like, if the company grew too big, then I wouldn't be able to be here with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And like and them taking the time to, you know, meet us and listen to us and take pictures and all that stuff, like that is such an endearing thing, and just earns loyalty
Mm-hmm.
and love and camaraderie, you know, like that you guys are there, you know, and we have this huge, you know, festival of just this huge community coming together and celebrating creations, you know, that the studio make, but also
Mm-hmm.
just reconnecting as friends. Like it's just an amazing thing that I've never seen another company, and they embrace that. Like they
Yeah.
listen, like you were saying, they listen to the fans, and I think the cabal is a good tool for that. You know, besides us gathering and talking, but I think that Jeremy is so savvy that he uses it. He listens, you
Mm-hmm.
know, to what we're saying, and that, you know, we appreciate that too. You know, it's like it's just, I don't know, it's just an amazing amazing studio and community that
But I
we're.
think like, you know, you making that point that Jim said about like even, you know, it's not that there's not an opportunity to sell in more mass market you know, avenues. There's just almost like a very direct resistance to it, and
Mhm.
that, you know, that might at times like kind of limit a like a business profit, but at what expense, you
Right.
know, do you lose? And then instead, what do you in fact gain from, you know, staying a little closer to the ground and being tried and true? And yeah, I mean, you know, you might sell more figures if you are in Walmart and Target and stuff like that, but you probably also then don't you can't do Legion's Con. Like
Right.
you can't brush shoulders with folks who, you know, and it's as clear as anybody who meets somebody, one of these guys at Legion's Con, like these are just normal everyday guys who happen to be doing something that gives pleasure to a lot of folks out there.
Right.
And it's, you know, it's a gift and a blessing, I think, to everybody who has a hand in it, that, you know, they're able to kind of see the fruits of their labor, but beyond that, like what that labor then gives to other people, and
Absolutely.
you know, it starts to create these cycles of just of like goodwill and cool stuff, you know.
Absolutely. Very
Yeah.
cool stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can't imagine like when Jim was like, so do you want to do this full time? Like, I can't imagine like, you know, like you being given this opportunity, but like also the excitement of maybe all the different things that you could do.
Mhm.
Like, oh, I can do this, or maybe this or this idea, or that, you know, is there like a limiter? Is there something like, have you gone to them and say, hey, what about this? Or, you know, has there been like talks and plans of things, you know, that you want to work on?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Oh
sweet.
yeah. I mean, and look, it's no secret that, and will not be a secret that, I want. I mean, like I have Necronominus behind me here. You know, I'm gonna do like a little Instagram video type thing as I've been
Awesome. I
doing, and of
love
course,
that.
that stuff is going to continue. It's a
Yeah.
really fun application of my craft, and is teaching me to do things with the camera that I have just never needed to do or had to access. And so, yeah, like getting into macro, and you know, just yeah, it's been a really fun pivot, and it no doubt has allowed me to leverage my skill sets in so many practical ways that, like in the classroom or in my art practice, I just don't necessarily need to do. Like we
Mhm.
needed to make a tablecloth for for the armory, you
Right.
know, and like no one I think would have been able to make the tablecloth as quickly or as like cleanly as I could. I mean, I could do it in 5 minutes, and I was like, oh, that's a skill set I've had for 20 years. I've never had to use it. It's never been practical before and may never be practical again afterwards. But in that moment, I was able to leverage something that, you know, I learned, I don't know, 15 years
Yeah.
ago how to do in Photoshop. And so, you know, there are those kind of things which I really appreciate. And a lot of just like the workflow things I've learned and that I am adopting in the studio are really awesome too. Are you still on? You have, I look, that you've got to get him on the show. He's gonna he's gonna
I've
take
asked him. I'll ask him again.
I think he's playing coy.
It's hard for him to sit down, I think. And
And that's not performative. I mean, that's the Chris we love and deal with every single
he's
day.
one of my favorite people in the studio. Like I every time I see him, I hug him, and I love that guy. His energy and his madcap are things that I adore about him.
But you know, I will add on to just one bit more, is like, you know, I mean, amidst these kind of daily duties, which is still going to be like some IT stuff, and I mean, like I said, I will sweep the floor happily until the day I can no longer hold a broom. There's no problem doing that kind of work. But what I am most excited about is leveraging the camera to
Mhm.
tell the stories that surround mythos. And you know, I haven't had such a great opportunity to do that yet,
Mhm.
um, but it's coming, right? And 2025 is going to start to open that up, I think, for all of us. And you know, I think like one of the things that was kind of asked of me after Legion's Con was, you know, did I film a lot of interviews? You know, like kind of walking up and doing impromptu.
Mhm.
And I very purposefully did not do that, because as much as I met you in those moments, like I don't, it's not appropriate for me to meet somebody with a camera in their face. Like if I want to be in service of of telling stories around this community. Like, I have to, not only do I have to gain some acceptance and some just awareness, like I also have to put in the time to get to know people first. And so often, like when I would come and actually engage in conversation with someone, my camera went down to my hip
Yeah,
because
I noticed. Yeah.
I'd rather be genuine in getting to know someone that will then set the stage for us to have
Right. But
conversations like this, or conversations wherein I might have my camera out for documentary purposes later.
I think that it's more true and honest to the person filming them and their natural, reaction. Like the reaction to the dragon is one of my favorite parts, because you're filming their what's coming out of them.
Mhm.
So like if you stopped and you said, "Hey Steve, what do you think about this dragon or this wave or something?" It might be prepared, it might be thought of,
Mhm.
like when you're getting a raw emotion or feeling from someone, that to me is more honest and more interesting than, a sit down interview with somebody.
Mhm.
That's just my thing. And I think it would be more talented. It would show more talent by getting emotion,
Sure.
like a director does from actors. You're filming, you're getting something raw from them. Um,
Mhm.
is more interesting than them talking about their craft or something. But that's just me.
Mhm.
But I really am looking forward to, this coming year, and what you bring to the studio. And I love that, you have that work ethic. And I think that that's something that might endear you to them, is that you'll do whatever because I see, Big Greg, he sells cars, but then he comes and and he'll sling boxes and he'll do
Mhm.
whatever. And I see all these guys, work their asses off, and and I feel like you fit into that. But I look forward to the media. It seems like that, they've got the comic book and they've got new toy lines and they've got, all these things coming out. And now they have you
Mhm.
in the media aspect. So it seems like they're really broadening, the studio. Like, I feel like the business is getting bigger. And
Mhm.
so they're trying to, keep up with what's going on, and by having you, it maybe helps them connect even more.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great time to be a horseman. It's a great time to be a part of this community. Yeah, I mean, the storytelling is going to happen on a lot of different levels. I mean, there's definitely going to be behind the scenes kind of insider stuff. Um, I like, one thing that I have a little regret. It is what it is, but I would have liked to have started like a how-to making of the scapular statue. Now I filmed a good bit of that coming into its being, but not quite enough to really make something meaningful out of it.
Mhm.
But make no mistake, if another one of those statues is
Pretty good
underway,
chance.
like my camera will be there from start to finish. And I think I like, again, I want to foreground the people that make this place work. I want to do some like staff vignettes and kind of show
Yes.
like the inner workings of
Yes.
the studio. But no doubt, as 2025 unfolds, like I really want to start talking to the community members
Mhm.
themselves directly. And I'm trying to identify some ways to do that,
Mhm.
and that might mean going out and visiting people, or connecting at cons,
Mhm.
and any and all of those opportunities that are up for consideration for sure.
Mhm.
And it's like a blessing and a responsibility, and a pretty cool just opportunity to be like charged with helping to like foreground these and elevate these stories. And yeah, I'm as excited. I'm as excited to be doing work as I have been in, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. So,
It's
you
awesome,
know,
man.
putting in the extra hours and stuff, it's well
Yeah,
where
you're
it's
at the
4 o'clock in
studio.
the morning.
Yeah, you're at the studio now and, talking to me. So I appreciate that. I won't take up too much more of your time, but I so
Right.
appreciate it. And I'm really excited. And I think a lot of us are excited for, the future of the studio, what's to come, new frontiers. And I'm glad that you're part of it for sure.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that you, not just you, but also the studio looks at the fan base too. You know what I mean? It's like I think a lot of companies might get caught up in, maybe their success and what's happening with them. And I always feel like the studio is not like that. They, like Cornboy was saying, we're you guys, and I love that mentality, and I'm so grateful that they have that, perspective, like you've mentioned multiple times that, you're filming, the fan base, and you're wanting to um document that. That was one of the first things that you told me, is that you're wanting to document the fan base, and it's like, wow, like that the studio would be even interested in that is awesome. But it just says something great about the studio too, that they realize that their fan base is what's important
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
to them. So just that you guys have that perspective is refreshing and wonderful about your studio.
Well, look, I mean, none of this exists without like the presence and contribution and the efforts of folks like you and anybody else who's out there watching. And it's I mean, I've had quite a few specific conversations with you so far, and so I feel like I've gotten to know you a little better than I have yet to get to know a bunch of other people out in the community. So you kind of help. You gave me a lot of comfort, I think, over the
Good,
weekend. Just,
good.
in those moments when you feel a little out of place. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, here we go. I got somebody I can latch onto for a second.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Um,
I was like, I don't know how you're gonna take it, but I will say hi and acknowledge you, and I was interested in your camera and what you were up to, and I was hoping that you were gonna be like, who's this guy? Why are you bugging me? I'm trying to focus here on that. So I appreciate you being receptive to my nosiness.
Look, I mean, uh, all I want to do as like an agent in this world is to make it better. Like I want the toys to sell more. I want everybody to be happy. I want the community to be that much closer. And if I can have any hand in any of that, then I'll go to bed pretty easy.
I hear that. I hear that. Words to live by. Well, thank you so much, Brad. I appreciate you so much, and I would hope that you would come back and share things that you're working on if you can,
For
or
sure.
just come out and you can come on and talk film. I would be happy with that. I do have your personal website.
Mhm.
I'd like to share. I did peruse some of your videos,
Mhm.
and I thought that they were super cool. There's one that you did real quick, that it was like you took some media from the 50s,
Mhm.
and you kind of spliced it together as a commentary. I
Mhm.
thought that was really interesting, but I don't know, there was something that scared me about it. It was like I don't know what it. I'll have to rewatch it, but I recommend people to check out some of the videos that you created. They're really interesting.
Thank you.
Uh,
A lot of that stuff leverages my family's archive. If you were looking at
mhm,
older imagery, with very likely that was 8 millimeter film shot by my grandfather or, another relative. I
mhm.
mean, it is fair to say that there is sometimes some darkness in that work. Like I have exercised some demons and I have navigated mental health challenges
Mhm.
through my artwork and stuff like that. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's definitely not quite as like poppy and positive is the way I get to use my camera here in the Mythos world. But they're things that I am deeply connected to and proud of, and also like kind of glad that I get to take a breather from that stuff and work in a
Right.
world
Do
that's like a
something
little
different. Yeah,
lighter and
you got
easier
Chris in your Chris in your peripheral in this world. But I mean, that's a facet of you, and I think an artist or a person that creates, they can use their art forms to kind of exercise things from them, or share it, or I think all the good filmmakers, that they have parts of themselves in their film,
Sure.
it's just they're listening to their creativity coming out, whether it's Eric and clay, whether it's an artist and canvas, or Kubrick and and film, they're listening to something deeper, and that to me is interesting. So yeah, I definitely was really inspired and impressed by some of the short films that you had on there. And
Thanks.
I'm like, man, I would love to talk to you about that, not on here, but just otherwise, because it kind of inspires me. It's like, man, I need to dust off my camera, and I want to start filming things, and just have using that technical photographic eye again.
Well, look, even short of that, I mean, I always like to say in moments like this, even if you're not picking up a camera to like make something, like pull out a family photo album and take a look at your loved ones and your ancestors, and be thankful for the ones that are still here, and say hello and give a little
Yes,
reminder to the ones who have passed on, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, and be thankful for the people that made you, right?
Absolutely. Well said, Brad. Well said. Thank you very much, Brad. I sure appreciate you, and I can't wait to talk again. You've got my number, you've got my email. Reach out, and I look forward to connecting with you, and having you on again, but also seeing you at cons with that camera, gliding in and out, taking all the pictures and stuff. And I'm super. I really, the people in the studio, I consider my friends, every one of them. And I consider you my friend, and I'm glad that you're
Indeed.
part of the team.
Likewise.
And I welcome you on behalf of myself. I can't welcome you on behalf of anybody else, but I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're part of this community. And I look forward to having another great year.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, I always say, like, we don't say goodbye. We'll just press pause on this conversation. We'll press play on it later. And
Absolutely.
In the meantime, yeah, we'll see you then.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you very much, Brad. Have a good night.
Of course. Yeah. Take care.
Take care.
Right. Bye.
Remember, friends, to always have fun, be curious, share, and enjoy what this line has to offer. Come for the toys, but stay for the friends. Good night, and thank you very much.